Hello, DJ Marty McFly speaking.
Hello, DJ Marty McFly. How are you?
I'm well. How are you, Aaron?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
For those who don't know Mr. Marty McFly, he's the man behind, I believe it's Getaway Recordings. He's a pioneer in our scene, and although he's more known as a breaks DJ and in the break scene, he's also a junglist and a true soldier. So I wanted to have him on. I wanted him to share himself with us. And with that, Marty, I've got a few questions lined up that I'll dive into. Okay.
Okay, sounds great.
Awesome. What are you up to, anyways? Like, I know we were supposed to get this going a little earlier, but you were delayed. What are you doing?
Well, I'll be honest. I'm old as fuck, and I'm folding laundry while we talk.
Hey, you know what? That reminds me. Did you hear? There's that convention going on in Las Vegas right now for
electronics.
Yes. Did you hear about the laundry folding robot?
I have not.
Dude,
that sounds like my dream girl.
Okay, so apparently for only $16,000 American, you can get it's like a drone. From what I saw, it's like a robot that flies in and it can do a load in under 2.5 minutes.
That is impressive.
But
I've never heard of that before.
Get on the
Google.
Well, and the thing is I think within a year it'll probably be down to half that. So you'll probably get it for a good under 10 grand.
Well, we'd have to check back with me in a year and see if I'm still folding.
But okay, I'll ask you the gold question I ask everyone. What was the last song that you were listening to before you and I chatted?
That's a good question. The last song I was listening to... Oh my gosh, I have this new Google Home automation and one of the Alexa ones as well, and I simply just ask it to play. So I asked it to play old school jungle, and what it did was it played a lot of that early 90s rave, which was like a cross between jungle and breakbeat. It was like heavy drums, but it was still fast tempo, and I wouldn't call it breakbeats, but you know what? It's still old school breakbeats if you want to think about it that way. I wish I could know the name of it, but all I know is when I was listening to it, I was picturing lots of whistles and people dancing around in platform boots and things like that.
Oh man, you know it's funny you bring up your Alexa. I saw that you had posted a video where you had asked it to play jungle and it played Marcus.
It played Marcus. How cool is that?
Isn't that awesome? That is big up Marcus Visionary. He was actually the guest.
Big up Marcus Visionary, absolutely. Like a pioneer. I mean, when I moved into Toronto in '96, he was around, and I love. It was just so cool. You know what I mean? You're like, fuck, I know that guy. That's amazing.
That is. I honestly, Marty, not knowing if I hadn't known you, I would have thought you set that up. I would have been like, oh, he photoshopped it. He superimposed that. There's no way it did that, but I know you're not that kind of person, so... Oh, no,
one take. I was just like, you've only got, the song might be 3 or 4 minutes? You've only got one shot at making a video. My friend's over, they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, shh, quiet. I gotta try this, because, A, I know Marcus. We've been DJ colleagues for years. He's been to my home. You know what I mean? Like, well, I have a roommate. My roommate knows him, and anyways, long story short, like, it's like, oh my god, I know this guy. So it's just kind of cool, you know, in the music scene, if you can make someone stay better, why not? So I asked Alexa what the heck that song was, and I hate that I don't know the name of it offhand, but she replied back with the title and that it was Marcus Visionary, and I shit my pants, and so that I pulled out the camera and I did it the second time, and there we go. And I put it on Facebook and gave Marcus the appropriate props he deserves. That bad man.
That was really, really cool, man. And he was actually who I chatted with last night. So it's funny how that's able to lead into that.
Oh, so cool.
It is. What I want to ask you, I actually didn't get to ask Marcus this. I'm hoping to have him on again, but something I'm sure many producers who are either into it long time or just getting into it, I want to know from people like yourself, like, what's your setup? What are you using to create what you make?
Okay, well, what am I using? So I have a Mac. I've got Logic built into there. And like many other up-and-coming people, producers, I didn't know where to start. So I watched a lot of YouTube videos, And to be quite honest, I found it really challenging. I am not going to sugarcoat this in any way. So what I ended up doing was I sought help from someone who had more knowledge, who could teach me and I could learn. And ideally what we did was we worked together on music. So him and I would sit down in a room and I would say, I want to recreate the sound. And I would beatbox it, or I would sing it, or... and how that helped me really was being able to utilize his experience, and he could pull out that sound for me. Now, to do the complete 180, sometimes I would just sit down and not know what I would want, and he would say, go through these sounds, pick the sounds you like. So I would pick sounds, and all of a sudden I could start to formulate a song in my head, and I was piecing things together. And I really attribute that to the years of DJing that I did before I got into producing, which wasn't, not too long ago. I really only got into the music making things, oh gosh, maybe only about 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Yeah. So that's primarily how I've been making music. I'd love to be able to sit down and educate everybody, but no, I took what resources I had available to me, and I tried to make something work for myself. And once I had a solid song, I started to see what labels might be interested in signing that particular track. And to my, well, I don't want to say to my surprise, but I was happily surprised when I had some labels, specifically Getaway Recordings in Florida, take an interest in what I was doing. And they had signed, they've signed at least 3 or 4 tracks of mine, which really gave me a nice push at the beginning. With Superfly Jeff was a pioneer in that, and he's an old school Florida breaks DJ down in the Orlando area. And I was just, I've been DJing since '92, so when I just kind of started releasing music, it was a different venture, if you will. So super nice to be able to play, drop your own track and watch people dance to it. A lot of the times I added my own lyrics to music just for the fun of it, because it was new to me. I'm like, I want to have my own little sound. And if they didn't have a sound, I would get on a mic and I would beatbox that sound. Even if it was something as simple as a, yeah, that I couldn't find a sample. But when you want to make your own music, you can make your own sounds, and then just, that was really my technique from what you were asking.
Well, yeah, no, thank you, and that's a great answer. One thing I think it brings up is knowing that you've been popularized in the community for so long, not being a producer, and in the community, in my opinion, to separate yourself from other DJs, if you're not producing your own sound or carrying a lot of white labels, it's more about who you know. But with you, it wasn't. It was about a special presence that you brought, an energy, a mix compilation. What would you say yourself, though, identifying on your own, that separated you from other DJs that was able to give you the popularity that you gained?
I guess everybody's different. For myself, if I'm not okay, let's maybe start at the beginning. I'm not a dancer. I like to, sway a little bit on the dance floor. If the song inspires me, I'll groove. But when I'm DJing, that's really when I'm dancing. And if I'm looking for music, back in the day at the record store, or in today's world where I'm looking for music from individuals who are making things on SoundCloud, as far as people who are doing things on Beatport and Juno, if that song is not going to make me dance, I don't expect anybody else to dance. And so it's a little bit cumbersome, because you want to find the perfect song to rock your dance floor, and that has been my drive this whole time. This is how I'm still DJing today. People will email me and say, I'd like to have you play, and they never ask really what I'm going to play, because I'm only going to bring things that I feel will make me move. And if I'm not moving, then I'm clearly sucking. And I don't like to suck, so I want to party with everybody else. So if I'm going to have that one shot to dance with everybody, and I got a 60-minute set, you're going to hear some tunes that's going to rock your feet. And I like to connect with people that way, because they're dancing on the dance floor, they're looking at me, I'm looking at them. Everybody's got little goose pimples, on your arm from the song, because it's so exciting, and we're just connected that way. And I'm thinking that connection between myself behind the DJ booth and those on the dance floor that we share that connection, and I'm always hopeful that that's a memorable experience for everybody who's there.
Yeah, no, and one thing I could say about someone being a fan of your music, the thing that's always made me think differently of you from others is kind of encompassed in what you said, in that you're genuine in what you're playing. I know you're not playing what I want to hear, you're playing what you want to hear, and as a result of that, regardless if I like it or not, I love you for being genuine, you know, and that's the thing that separates you. And I wouldn't say that you're anything like John B, but it's that same vibe as a John B in my mind, where it's like, I don't always like the selection, but I would always love to go watch that guy play.
Well, I'll take that compliment. Thank you.
But yeah, and Marty, with that, I had mentioned before that you're more as of a breaks DJ. However, I swear I've seen you do jungle. I swear I've emceed you while you're doing jungle. What would you say is the difference in definition when you from breaks to jungle? Like, not just the two musics, but yourself. Like being a DJ since '92 and being encompassed in the scene when jungle drum and bass was kind of being born. You went towards breaks more than jungle. Why is that?
In a way, it was the tempo primarily. It was a little bit slower, and I always, when I had family friends ask me what kind of DJing I did, I was like, oh, it's just like rap music, but it's on 45, you know, implying that you could have a record player that you could pitch to 45 RPM. And with jungle, I always found jungle great, but I grew up in the I'm dating myself, but in the late 80s, so I was really into a lot of hip-hop, like De La Soul, A Tribe Called Quest, and Farside. Well, I guess that's in the 90s, but that kind of tempo. And I found that it was such an easy crossover from loving that style of music and then transitioning over to jungle, where samples were taken from that era, or, you know, from reggae or wherever it may be taken from. But I just really loved the tempo. There was a fun part to dance. Then there was always a little jungleistic breakdown. You could either liquid dance to that. You could hug the girl next to you. You know, it's just you and the person on the dance floor. You know, I don't go to a lot of jungle parties, but when I'm DJing at them, I find myself on the dance floor, just maybe off of the wall a little bit, but I've got my hands in the air. I've got a lighter ready. You know, I got a cell phone app with a lighter if I need it. I am immersed in that genre, and from a DJ perspective, like, I never really even DJ'd it. I think I've tried it once or twice where I've had other people share folders with me and we go back to back, and, you know, I can get the basics down where I can blend from one song to the next. I don't know if it's good or not, but I assume it's good because, you know, I'm not train wrecking, but hopefully it sounds good. And then, yeah, that's. I think that's really my draw towards jungle specifically. I like the community. I love how jungle's really, especially in our Toronto scene. Like, our Toronto jungle scene has always been really strong, and you just can't find that anywhere else. Even in our break scene has had its ups and downs, but the jungle stream has always been strong, and I'm not saying that's why I'm drawn to it, but I'm not surprised by that at all.
Well, yeah, great answers, Marty. I'm loving the answers. I would say the thing I find interesting, and Marcus kind of touched on it yesterday, you've kind of said it a bit today about the vibe, the scene. I myself grew up as a Candy kid who transferred into jungle drum and bass, and it had nothing to do with the music at first. It was 100% the scene. I saw the people I was around weren't my type of folk, if you will. So, and then I started getting into jungle, and then once again it was getting a little too rough for me, and I got into breaks, not because of the music at first, but because of the people. And it was like, it was exactly how you described it. The dance was a little different. It was a bit more of a liquid than a rough, and I didn't have to fear getting, you know, robbed at the party.
Oh yeah, that's important too.
It is. It's a big aspect. Like, and the thing I love about Marcus, honestly, he was so sweet about how he would say certain things. He wouldn't bluntly say anything, but I knew what he was beating around the bush about because I lived it. And it's amazing how the different musics take in different types of people, and you get different cultures and people going where they are. Sometimes not just for the music, but because of the group, right?
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I definitely would agree with that. Like, if I think back to the earlier days of raving, it seemed that some of the events were Yeah, you know, and it's tough to say. When I started raving, I was in the Vancouver rave scene. And at that time, there were parties that had drugs and parties that had more drugs. And there were parties that had, that were anti-drugs. And it seemed like all the music inside at the time, because raving was so new at the time, you could have a combination of a jungle DJ. It wasn't like one sound all night kind of thing. It was a blend of everything. So you had different people coming in for different reasons. And then as the music evolved in Canada and grew, I found myself going to all jungle parties, or more specifically, jungle in one room and breaks and house in the other. That was a really big deal. And now that I'm thinking about it, I know I played a lot of really amazing shows here in Toronto in the late 90s and early 2000s. And even back then, I would come out and say, oh, I wonder who this Congo Naughty guy is. I think he's pretty good, I hear. But I had no clue who he was. So my raving experience was really DJing at these second rooms and coming out and going, oh, Skibbity. I really like his voice. Or I can't remember, he's an MC. He's an MC, right? I can't remember.
Skibbity, I think you're saying. Skibbity, yes.
Yeah, Skibbity. So, oh man, I lost my train of thought here, but...
No, but I think I get where you were going with what you were saying, Marty, and that is that you're a guy who comes from one world, yet because of that world you were in, you were asserted into a bunch of other worlds that... Sometimes your expectations, being who you were in the previous world, they expect you, hey, yeah, this is Skibba. You don't know Skibba? And it's like, well, no shit, man. I know everyone in the breaks world, but I don't know nobody over here. But
I really didn't know anybody over there. And when I see, even today, there's an Instagram page called the Flyer Vault, and they seem to post a lot of the older anything Toronto party-wise related, which is really nice. I get to look, and some of the flyers I may not have kept over the years, or maybe I just don't have them anymore. They repost them. So I look and I'm like, oh, Ray Keith, I DJ'd with that guy. Oh, that's cool. Huge names that, if I think about it, you know, maybe now that I'm older, I would probably even appreciate it even more. But at the time, I was like, oh, who's that guy? Oh, that's the headliner. Very cool. Okay, well, I'm headlining the other room, and maybe we'll get to meet.
And you know what, I specifically remember like doing performances at the same show as you for Big Bud, for when Dylan was still alive. And
yes,
it would be exactly as you described. We'd have the jungle drum and bass in one room, and the other room would be breaks, and you'd be on there. And they were happy times. But the thing is, I not to date you, but I am a little younger than you are, and you kind of touched on it, but I want to go deeper into that. Do you remember? You mentioned it was in Vancouver. What was your first rave like? Like, do you remember your first party?
I do. First rave was in a warehouse. I remember going through this building and going, oh, that's where the offices are. And they were chill rooms. You would walk in, and the visuals of the time, I remember, very simple, like a display that might be shone on a wall. Not a projector, if you will, like what they have today, but like literally like a light. And inside the light, there would be a type of liquid. And that liquid would be projected onto the wall, and it was like the walls were melting. I mean, that was the type of decor they had back then, at least for, the one of these events, the first event that I'm remembering. And then you would go out into the dance floor, and there would be a sea of people. And I was young. I was in my 20s. I partied back then. And I remember going and celebrating the evening and being on the dance floor. And the one thing I remember at the time was when all the lights and the music and everything inside me connected. And I just felt like I was kind of in... You know that ride at your fair where if you were in the middle, you would be fine, but all the people going around and around were spinning. And I just felt like I was in this little snow globe, if you will, where everything was turning around, but I was just in the center of it all. And it just blew me away. I was like, this, maybe it was the experience and everything around it, but that was my memory of the lights and the sound and, of course, the people and the kindness of people. And I will add, I went to an after party, and so when I was at the after party, these people had turntables in their house, And coming from a hip hop background and loving De La Soul, they always had scratches, and the guy's like, "Go ahead and scratch." And I grabbed the platter and I scratched, and I don't know how many people I pissed off, but I bought turntables the next day.
Oh, that's awesome! So straight from the rave into the DJing. It all it took was one night.
One night, and realistically, I could only afford one turntable, so I bought the one Technique 1200, and then I bought a shit one from a pawn shop, and eventually, when I could mix from the shit one to the good one, was when I bought the second one, and I actually have the same pairs. They're like 26 years old or whatever they are. I don't know do the math, but yeah, they're pretty old, and I've only had them tuned up once. Like those things are a workhorse.
That's amazing, man. And you know what? With the story you just told, it makes me think of the drug aspect of our culture and how there can be positive. Okay, recreational use of drugs can be done in a positive way, and when it becomes abundant, like it did in our scene, you get other people that come into it. And really, I often say to people that choose to use drugs, I'll say like, or their kids are using drugs. What drug you're using says a lot about what you're doing. If you're using coke or meth or heroin, you're doing something different than somebody who's taking acid or mushrooms. And there's a lot to be said about a person who can go through, let's say, a spiritual moment like you just described, and we're talking 30 years ago, and you're remembering it like it happened yesterday, and it had such a deep impact on your life and your experience within this culture. Yet that same environment that gave birth to that ability also gave birth to that horrible, jungle, bad ruffian culture, if you will. And yeah, it's just something I guess I'm somewhat trying to expose through these chit chats I'm having. But
yeah, I would say, to be fair to other genres, I don't know if the music it comes. Like, I wouldn't want to say that jungle is exclusively one style of drug and house is another. I think it always comes down to that individual, because if someone has a problem or has an addictive personality, the next thing you know, if they have tried something and then they start to do it more and more, and it becomes out of their control because that's who they are as a person, that shouldn't really reflect negatively on the music. You're talking about DJing and drugs, and I know that when I was going quite regularly to events, especially coming from Vancouver, when I left Vancouver and I came to Toronto, I really paid attention to the drugs, because it was something that I wanted to be aware of. And so if I saw a kid coming to my shows regularly and losing weight and looking bad, I'm not a professional counselor, but we're like ambassadors of the rave scene, in a sense, where if we love the people who are coming to see us, why wouldn't we just take 5 minutes to talk to them? And a lot of the times I find myself, even when I was DJing for Happy Hardcore events in the second room, if I saw kids that I thought needed help because they looked like they were having a problem, I would talk to them. What are you doing? How are you doing? How are you going to deal with this? Like, what is the big, do you have a problem? Are you talking to your parents? I've had kids come up to me and phone me back when we had pagers, and they would have my number, and they would page me. And I remember talking to one boy in particular who said, "Marty, I have a problem. I don't know what to do." And I was so grateful that the boy called, and we talked on the phone, and I advised him to talk to his parents, and he did. And you know what? He is an upstanding young man right now, as we all become, but we all have trouble in our early 20s, I think. Most of us hopefully overcome them, but in his particular scenario, it was nice to be able to be available and to be able to help people in our scene, because, they come for the music. There might be other temptations, but the point is not to get addicted and living on the streets or selling your body for drugs, all these horrible things that might be associated with having a problem.
It's definitely, I myself, Marty, am someone who, at 25, I was checked into a hospital and had to get clean, and I've been clean now for almost 9 years, and I don't blame it on the industry. It was just an easy place for me to go to get what I wanted.
Yep.
And when I say the music's like what you were describing about like a hullabaloo, I specifically remember being at a hullabaloo and watching guys who I had seen at a previous Cyrus in the Jungle Room, and I was like, what are they doing here? And what they were, we know what they were doing. They were there to rob candy kids. And
oh, I see what you mean. Yes, that was a thing too for a while. Yeah,
it wasn't the. I'm not talking the drugs. You're right. In every industry, there was the drug use, but it was more the go to a jungle jam and watch your back. Whereas every other room, there was never any of that. And if it was happening, it was because the junglists were coming. And that I guess that it's left. I hope, but I have to say, man, I reached out to a couple old friends when I said I was doing what I'm doing right now. And some of them had some very jaded opinions about our scene, about what you and I are talking, that it's rampant with drugs and bad people, and you know, I've either gotten into this or I do that now, and I'm like, I don't see what you guys see. Like, it's something I saw in the past, but I don't see it anymore. And so. But with that, I guess it leads me into my next question. What do you think is the biggest change you've noticed in our rave culture in, let's say, the last 5 years?
I think things have changed. Well, my opinion is that back in the day, you would go to a club every week to hear music, and I think today there's so much media available online, and you can get music just directly into your home. So my opinion is that I think a lot of people would, rather than go week to week to a club, and I don't want to say to get high, but to go week to week to a club, to see a big name act, I want to choose my words carefully because I'm kind of generalizing. Like, there are some clubs that have great artists every week, but not everybody goes every week to a club. But I do find that a lot of the young kids now, or a lot of kids now, are waiting for their either A, their favorite promoter, or B, for a huge festival, because it's so cool to be surrounded by thousands and thousands of people. And if you're going to a small club, like, say, something as small as Baseline, or maybe something a little bigger like Coda, Nest, you know, there's only so many people you could put in there. You won't get that big party feel anymore. So what I feel is a lot of people are not attending those smaller venues anymore, and they're saving their money. They're paying whatever the cover is for a larger rave, which is fine. Save your money, go to what you can go to. Even myself, this summer I'm going to a party called Classics. It's a privately non-advertised event where people who don't want to go to large festivals, who live in the Halifax area, are going to. And I think it's cool. There's only 100 people there. I got booked to DJ at it last year. I had such a good time that I'm going myself this year. And it kind of is funny because it's all house music. And I don't want to say I hate house music. I just don't like dancing to it. But that doesn't mean there's not good people who go out to these events. And really, it was that atmosphere and that small-knit community that I really like. But everyone picks their favorite event. And I think the trend typically is really to go to something that you like. And I think a lot of people are, rather than going to a small club, would rather go to a large festival, save up all winter, and go to something big in the summer.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And one thing I'd add to what you said is I find listeners have become more educated. I hate to admit it, but I myself, when I first started getting into this scene, it didn't matter who was on the flyer. If they had a UK flag next to their name, that was an extra $20 out of my pocket. And now it's not so simple. Whereas I think the internet's also brought people the ability to be more intelligent. We had to hustle mixtapes and try and get our hands on. You know, I remember going down to Numb, for instance, and getting those tape packages and you'd listen to them, and it was literally like 8 different DJs playing the same 10 songs in a different order with a different MC on it. So you couldn't really even differentiate on who was good, and you didn't know the track listings that you were listening to, so you didn't know who produced anything. So it didn't matter who was on the bill, you know what I mean? But nowadays you don't get away with that, and as a result we have a more educated fan base. And I like to think that a lot of the people, like I don't go out as much as I used to, but when I do go out, I don't see the spaced out eyes. Like, you're able to have coherent conversations with people, and that's important to me. But one last question I wanted to ask you, Marty, is if you could create a time capsule that would encapsulate our culture, let it be breaks, house, everything. Pick 5 items that you would throw into that capsule.
5 items. I think the first item would be a book. Because back in the day, we would go to parties and people would have a book and they would say, "Would you sign my book?" And I don't know if this was in the jungle scene as much, but I know in the happy hardcore scene it was a thing.
It was huge in happy hardcore, man. It was the bracelets, the book, and the
bracelets, the book. And how cool was it to come home and going, "Okay, what the hell did I do last night? Let's read this book." And then how cool would it be to look 10 or 20 or in the future, you know, and read some of these things and go, what was I thinking? Or, you know, it's just a neat little caption of mine. So I would say the first thing would be a book. The second one I think would be good would be just some old flyers, something to document what was. I think that would be a good one. I want to say clothing as well. I love...
Fun fur? Are we talking about fun fur?
Pick up all the jungle girls. Like I love anyone who looks like Sporty Spice on the dance floor. Like I just love clothing in general. So whether it's those wide pants, which I never wore, even though I was a skater, I never wore those pants. But I would say some of the clothing, something to reflect it. Be that fun fur, be that a cool hat, a bandana, something from Solid Apparel, like just something that would be reflective of our era.
How about Snug? Remember Snug? Whatever happened to Snug?
Oh, Snug. Oh, of course. I couldn't afford Snug back then. I was spending all my money on records.
Okay, so I think we've got 3 items there. We've got some clothing, we've got some flyers.
2 more. I guess a cassette. I would throw in a cassette of mine. Probably my first mix was one of my favorites, which was called As Is. And you know what? Just because it's been recent, one of my new tracks as well. But that doesn't really reflect the whole scene as a general. It's just really more a reflection of things that I like. And maybe an old school rave bracelet just for good measure.
I'm surprised you didn't say bracelet or an episode of Back to the Future sooner.
Even a copy of my old dope radio show. Like I mean, those. It's been a fun life of music for me. So it's funny that I'm only picking the first things that come to my head, but I'm sure some more will pop in after we hang up.
I'm getting a call back. Okay, let's edit this. I got a couple others.
Yeah.
All right, well, Marty, I want to thank you for taking the time. We went well over the 20 minutes we agreed, so I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
My pleasure.
Do you have anything coming up that you want to talk about right now? Any new songs, any performances you want to mention?
No, nothing else that's coming up right now. I'm anxiously waiting for the summer. Every year, you know, I'm always thrilled when people email me to DJ. That's the only way I will get notified. Sometimes I'll contact a promoter or two, and other times I'll throw my own event. But as it stands right now, I'm in a really happy place, and I'm just waiting for people to contact me. And when they do, I'm there with my brakes on.
Awesome, buddy. Well, hey, it was nice chatting with you, and I will talk to you soon, sir, okay?
All right, take care, and thank you, and Happy New Year to all your listeners.
Thank you. Happy New Year, Marty.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
All right, guys, that was Marty McFly. We thank him for coming on. I got another guest coming in for Monday. Guys, this is actually going really well. People are agreeing. Like I mentioned during that interview, I have had a couple people that have told me that they're kind of jaded, which I've got to respect. I really appreciate them actually responding. They don't have to respond. So I'm grateful that every person I've reached out to up to now has at least talked back to me and told me their opinion of what I'm doing and if they'll be involved or not. And we got a lot of interviews lined up. So I'm going to keep these coming. I hope you guys enjoyed that one with Marty McFly. If you want to find him, Google him or search. I don't know if you can search my list, but if you can search my list, he's on there. The guy is a great producer, an even better DJ, and an even better human being. So I really support everything he's doing. And as always, guys, till next time, peace out.